What up, guys? I got my man Ian coming in to talk UFC. Ian's been studying the UFC. He, as a former amateur boxer himself, he really knows all the fighters, all the gyms, all the coaches. So we bring him in, and don't forget that anything can happen, especially when grown men who are trained to kill each other are trying to kill each other. So this is for fun. Don't forget, we do the best we can at SugarBets, but nothing is ever guaranteed. Ian, I wanted to start. I was just checking things out, and I noticed that Schnell, it appears, declined his flyweight bout with Alex Perez. I was curious. I know it's early and this just happened, but I'm curious if you had a thought on that. What would cause somebody to either decline, or if you have any more knowledge on what happened with that fight?
I think this is the fourth time this fight has fallen through. They were supposed to fight in December, didn't work out. I think one of the guys got hurt. They were supposed to fight before that in September, and then I think before that, like in the spring. So this is the fourth. Like, they should just stop trying to make this fight, honestly. What I think happened is Perez missed weight, and Schnell declined the fight because of that.
I see.
I don't think he missed weight by that much. Not like William Knight missed weight, which we'll talk about later, but it was a couple pounds. And typically what happens in that scenario is the fighter who misses weight will forfeit a percentage of his purse to the other fighter if he accepts the fight. So I don't really know what the reasoning is behind this being canceled, behind Schnell declining to accept the fight after Perez missed weight. It could just be a moral stance. If you're not going to make weight, you don't deserve to fight. I don't know. Some guys are like that. It could be that this was his out. Maybe he wasn't prepared. I really don't know. It could be so many things. And it might not have even been his decision. It could have come down from his coaches or his manager or whoever. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's always interesting. We're always trying to get smarter about the inner workings of the UFC and why things happen the way they do, because it helps us find opportunities at the sports books. Moving on. So let's get right into UFC 271. This should be a great weekend. I cannot wait to watch these fights. So let's start with the prelim card. We're not going to go super early prelims. All right. Carlos Ulberg and Fabio Cherant. Looks like experienced guys by age, 31-27 respectively, but relatively light records. We're looking at Ulberg is 5-1 and Cherant is just 7-3. Taking a quick look at DraftKings, it looks like Ulberg is the favorite. He is -265, which gives us an implied odds of 72% chance of victory. Ian, what do you think of Ulberg Cherant?
That actually makes sense to me. He had a pretty rough UFC debut. So when you say that he's 7-3, that's his professional MMA record. That's not his record in UFC. So he fought in other promotions. And he made his way to Contender Series. He had a KO there. So we know that he's got KO capabilities. He went into his UFC debut. Wasn't so lucky there. He lost that fight. But he did secure a fight of the night bonus. So he's down to scrap, even though he got knocked out in that debut. So in a way, this is a redemption fight for him. So it's kind of a way for the promotion to get him back on track. So assuming he's cleared that last knockout out of his mind, which is really important for young fighters once they take that like KO loss, I don't really see a reason that he's not going to secure an early victory in this one over Cherant by way of like just brutal, violent annihilation. I think that 73% makes sense. I think he gets an early KO in this one.
Well, you're a good handicapper, my friend, because you match what the books say. I'm looking at DraftKings. Carlos Ulberg to win by KO, TKO, or disqualification is actually a favorite at -135. So they're fully expecting him. And in fact, under 1.5 rounds, so it is also the favorite. So DraftKings is expecting exactly what you said. They're expecting, it's likely that we see a first round KO.
So Ulberg's last fight was back in the spring, in March. It was his debut, and he got knocked out in the second round. And it was just a matter of, I don't know, it could have been debut jitters, probably not, but I think he just was overwhelmed by the opposition. Honestly, another younger up and coming guy took a KO, but he's got a lot of power in his hands. He's got a lot of, skill everywhere. I really just, I don't have a reason to believe that he's not going to get this knockout. I think the bettors are probably correct on this one. Of course, like you said, it's two guys trained to kill who know how to kill each other. So anything can happen. Of course, there's always that caveat, but I think this
Let's
is
put
redemption.
it, let me ask it a math way, because this is the way I identify opportunities. So when I look at something like minus 135 for Allberg to win by KO, that tells me that DraftKings thinks there's a 57% chance. That's what they've set the odds at. So what I like to ask is, do you think there's a better than 57% chance that Allberg wins by KO? And if so, I'm going to take that bet. I really like where I'm paying less juice. So it's minus 135 to take him by KO, where if I want to bet him just to win, it's minus 265. So you're getting much better odds to put it on him to win by KO.
I think so. This goes two ways. This is a guy who has more than a 50% chance of getting a knockout in the first round. And then Fabio Chiron is a guy that he's coming off back-to-back stoppage losses. So, and you could also think of it as there's more of a 50% chance of him getting knocked out in the first couple of rounds. So there are just a lot of signs pointing to this being a redemption fight for Ulberg and getting the knockout early.
Gotcha. You could also consider, I'm looking at just Allberg in round one is plus 140. So you're getting positive odds there. If you think Sharon can hold on till round two, Allberg round two plus 500, and method of victory does not matter. Obviously, it would have to be a KO or TKO if it's going to be in the second round. But yeah, you can get Allberg in the second round at plus 500. That might be worth a half unit bet. But I think overall, my bet here is going to be Allberg to win by KO. Simple as that. Minus 135. I don't mind paying that juice. It sounds like we've got over a coin flip chance to hit that. Yeah, that sounds right to me. And we're paying just a 57% implied odds. So we're going to call Carlos Allberg to win by KO. That's our bet of that fight, minus 135 at DraftKings. Always shop your books. You may be able to find that. Let's see real quick check. Allberg by KO is 135. Also at FanDuel. Just always do your checks. Make sure you check all your sports books and bet where you get the best odds. So next, let's see what we got. This was a fun one to talk about last night, so I'm happy to hear your thoughts again. Kyler Phillips, Marcelo Rojo. What you got?
Yeah, I think this is an exciting fight. So this is one of those like promising prospect versus seasoned vet kinds of fights. I typically in those situations will usually lean towards the veteran. I think fight IQ says more than talent most of the time. I think it does more for a fighter.
And sorry to interrupt. In our case, we're talking Rojo's the experienced fighter. Is that right?
Yeah.
Rojo 16-8, 33 years of age. Kyler Phillips 9-2, 26 years of age. Same height, same weight, same reach.
Yeah, so typically I would take the more seasoned fighter in fights like this, especially on a main card fight. I think I think this being on the main card with two guys that, considering the rest of the card in the prelims and the early prelims, there's not really a good reason, honestly, that this fight made it to the main card. Other than the only logical reason being that this is a promotional showcase for Phillips. I think the UFC is expecting him to go in there and get a flashy knockout. He's a flashy guy. He's a dynamic fighter. He moves really well. And honestly, I think he'll probably do it. We've seen that not work out for the UFC before. We'll talk about Derek Brunson before knocking out like Edmund Shabazian, whatever it is. But the same thing with Brunson knocking out or defeating Kevin Holland. So we've seen that not work out. This is a promotional showcase for Phillips. He moves well, he fights well, he's dynamic, he's exciting. I just think that he's going to be too much for Rojo, and I think he'll do it. I think he'll get it done.
Mm-hmm. Do either of these fighters have KO potential?
Well, they both, of course, have KO potential. I don't know that it's going to go to a KO. Like, there is a lot of skill here on Phillips' side, and then Rojo has that experience. Phillips could overwhelm and confuse Rojo with that, but I think Rojo is going to be smart enough to kind of hang back and not fall for it, not get baited by it. So I think ultimately you're going to see Phillips doing a lot of stuff. Rojo is a very fundamental fighter in a lot of ways. And I think he'll use that. And that will lead to a little bit slower of a pace fight than people might want. But what that might mean is I think it might go, especially in 3 rounds, I think it might go to a decision. I could see Phillips ending it in the third. But I wouldn't expect like a first round finish.
Okay. All right. So some interesting betting points here. One, Kyler Phillips is a massive favorite. If I'm looking at DraftKings, he's minus 450, which carries implied chance of victory of 81%. So the sports books or the public, sports books, these lines have been out, and these fights are tomorrow. So this could be the public coming in on Friday and dropping money. I wish I was tracking the change. I'm not sure it was that large of a favorite yesterday when I was looking, but Kyler Phillips minus 450 is a massive favorite, and this is interesting. What my bet on this fight might be the over 2.5 rounds. So betting that it will go to the third round. It can end in the third round when the line's over 2.5, but you can get that at plus 140. You can get plus odds on over 2.5 rounds. That implies 41% chance of occurrence. So if you think there's over a 41% chance this fight goes into the third round, even if there is a knockout by Phillips in the third, you would win that over 2.5. So if I had to pick a bet on this, I don't like give Payne that much juice. Minus 450 is high. You can consider parlaying that. I'll be honest, pro bettors will do that because it's such a high chance of victory. Some pro bettors are willing to pay. They're willing to bet $450 to win 100 or $45 to win 10. If you think about it, like just trying to increment your bankroll, that is an option as always. But to your point about Rojo being an experienced fighter, you never know what can happen in UFC. Huge lines like that could scare me away a little bit. So I like to look for the opportunity. And it looks to me like over 2.5 is the most likely positive odds bet that we can make. So let's say Kyler Phillips, Rojo over 2.5 rounds.
Yeah. And I'll say Phillips does have the ability to end the fight early. And I think that's what bettors are probably suggesting that he might. Definitely has the skill set to end the fight early. I'm not expecting Phillips to not win this fight. What I'm banking on is Rojo to use his experience to keep his distance and extend the fight.
And I like that. That's why I like the over 2.5. And I mean, sure, if you could consider hedging with Phillips to win by KO at minus 110. That sounds like that's probably a decent. Again, why pay minus 450 when you know the method of victory and you can get it at minus 110? Again, do the math, check your books, but over 2.5 at plus 140 on DraftKings and Phillips to win by KO at minus 110 on DraftKings, I think are two good bets for this fight. Next, we have a women's flyweight bout. We have Roxanne Modafferi and Casey O'Neill. Casey O'Neill is 8-0 in her career. Modafferi is 25-20. So we've got another tale of very experienced fighter with what looks like an up-and-comer in O'Neill.
Put all the money you have on O'Neill. She's 8-0 for a reason. So this is Modafferi's farewell fight. She's already said that she's retiring after this fight. She gets kudos for being a fighter that works hard and fights hard. Her fighter nickname is the Happy Warrior. I don't think she's going to be too happy after this one. I just don't think that she can keep up with O'Neill anywhere. On the feet, Modafferi has some tendencies to be a little bit clunky with her striking and her fundamentals. O'Neill, on the other hand, is pretty smooth and pretty quick from what I've seen. On the ground, though, O'Neill is pretty much just going to do whatever she wants. So I don't really think that like there's a scenario that Modafferi pulls it off. So I don't know, but happy retirement, I guess.
Yeah, it's a strange one to pre-announce your retirement, little Ben Roethlisberger before the Chiefs. If you ask me, everybody saw what was going to happen in that game. It sure did. Yeah, O'Neal's minus 400. That's a big favorite. Again, that's about a 79% implied chance of success. They've got the line for just over under on going the distance. Over 2.5's minus 195. So bettors in the sports books are basically lined up with what you're saying. O'Neal's probably going to win. Good chance it goes to the distance. You did say something super interesting. I'm curious, does O'Neal have a submission opportunity if she has got a good ground game, or does she typically not submit? Because O'Neal by submission is plus 500. You can get paid 5 to 1. That's any time of the match, O'Neal by submission. Or other thing I like is O'Neal by decision plus 100, even money to get O'Neal by decision versus that minus 400 to get her. I'm a big fan, if you haven't figured this out yet, of the method of victory play, because you just get such better odds and a much better payout. So I wanted to ask again, what do you think of Casey O'Neal's potential for submission?
It's there. It's not like it couldn't happen. She has submission. She has jiu-jitsu skills. She's used them before. Modafferi, like it's just like she's a grinder. Modafferi is a grinder. She doesn't like particularly excel in any one area. It's not like her strength. So wherever this fight goes, Casey O'Neal's just going to finish it where it is. Could be on the ground, could be on the feet. I don't expect to go to a decision, because here's the other thing. She's already announced her retirement. O'Neal's up and coming. I mean, this is a bold statement, but there is a high likelihood she fights for a title relatively soon. She has like championship material. So knowing she's up and coming, knowing she's undefeated, Modafferi has clearly lost a lot of fights. She's not fighting for anything other than like another paycheck and to go out possibly on top. I don't think the motivation's there. I don't think the skill set's there. So wherever the fight goes, if you want to flip a coin and say she's going to knock her out or she's going to submit her, that's where your bet, could be.
Yeah, I'm looking at DraftKings. I mean, O'Neal by KO plus 300, by submission 500, by decision plus 100. No matter what, you're making money or getting even money. I think, again, do the math. I have not done the math yet, but do the math on this and make sure you're getting. But I think you could hedge. I think you could take O'Neal by all method of victories instead of her minus 400 and still make out like a bandit, especially if she submits, which you don't expect. That's definitely the least likely of these outcomes. But if she goes to the ground and she gets a TKO because she's just pummeling,
which could happen. She has a pretty good ground and pound game.
Yeah, as soon as you said she's got a good ground game, I went right to the submission and TKO lines, and plus 500 for submission, plus 300 for TKO. I like it. So we like O'Neal, and we like O'Neal with stacking the method of victories. So you could pretty much, no matter how she wins, you're getting at the worst case even money. Again, do the math, make sure you're hedging properly. Use a hedge calculator online if you have to. All right, next up, it's Arlovsky versus Vandera. And again, looking at what appears to be not an up-and-comer, 12-6 in Vandera, and Arlovsky at 32-20. So again, though, it still seems like a more experienced fighter up against a newer fighter. What do you got on Arlovsky and Vandera?
This is a case where I am going to take the more experienced fighter. So whatever Arlovsky has lost in brute power over the years, he's an older guy now. He's up there in age. I think he's in his 40s probably.
He is 43.
Yeah, he's in his 40s. So whatever he's lost in power just from age, he's definitely made up for in spades, just in terms of pure fight IQ. He's been very up and down over the last, he's been around a long time, but over the last few years, he's been pretty up and down. But they've been putting against younger guys lately, and he's been beating them. So he knows his strengths. He doesn't try to be the pit bull that he once was. He fights smart. Vandera is 1-2, I believe, in the UFC. So he doesn't have a great UFC record. And going against a guy like Arlovsky, it's a heavyweight fight. So like anything could happen. Any of these guys can knock the other guy out. But and Bender is younger and faster, but I don't think that makes an impact on Arlovsky. I think Arlovsky gets it done probably by decision here.
Okay. Yeah, Arlovsky at DraftKings is -140. That implies a 58% chance of success. So books and bettors do have him as the favorite. They also seem to expect us to go the distance. Over under is 2.5, and that's a -200. So you're paying a lot of juice if you want it over 2.5. So all that said, the bet that I'm looking here is Arlovsky by decision. Like you mentioned, you can get that +110. Again, I'm with UFC very often looking for those little extra edges where I can get plus money and not have to pay the juice to win. When I expect Arlovsky to win, the books are telling you the odds are it's going to go into the third round. KO is not likely. I like Arlovsky by decision +110. Once again, always shop your books. I am looking at DraftKings. I have not had a chance to check the other sports books. Next, we're moving on to the main card. Looking 10 p.m. tomorrow night, Bobby Green and Nasrat Haqparast. Bobby Green and Nasrat Haqparast. Let's take a look at their records. Again, Bobby Green looks a little more experienced. He's got 9 years on Haqparast. Haqparast is 13-4. Bobby Green's 28-12. What do you think of this?
So I like that I get to watch Bobby Green fight this weekend. I like his resurgence. He's lost a few recently, but they've been really competitive, and he's also won some pretty key fights. I think his last fight, he beat Al Iaquinta by decision, which is a pretty big deal. He needs to be able to mix it up to overwhelm the younger fighter, but there's no reason for me to believe that he doesn't already know that, and he isn't, that's not part of his game plan. So no discredit to Haqparast. He's a good wrestler. He's a good fighter. He's got a pretty good chin, but I think I'm going to take Green. I think he's just going to be too much for the younger guy here.
And the books agree. They've got Bobby Green -145, so that implies a 59% chance of victory. This is at DraftKings. The over-under is 2.5. So again, bettors are expecting this to go into the third round, most likely by decision. Much like I just said with Arlovsky, we like Bobby Green at -145. We especially like him by decision. That's +120. So if you like those plus odds, you're going to take Bobby Green to win by decision at +120. If you just like Bobby Green overall and you think he's got a chance of KO or submission at some point, you can take him -145. But I'm a big fan of those positive odds. Why not get the most you can from the sports books? So Bobby Green to win by decision +120 at DraftKings. As always, check your sports books. Compare DraftKings to FanDuel, compare to Caesars, compare to MGM, BetRivers, PointsBets. Anywhere you can get these bets, always compare and get the best odds. Next on the main card is Alexander Hernandez and
Moicano.
I'm
glad. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into this one. This was an early prelim fight that had no business being on the early prelims. Alexander Hernandez made a big deal about it. He was like, why the hell are we fighting in early prelims? Both these guys are, they're not legends of the sport by any regard, but they're known. They've fought big names. So I was kind of in Hernandez's corner. Like, why is this an early prelim fight? First of all, why is this a free fight? Like, this is any other night. This is on the prelims, if not the main card. So I'm glad that it, got moved up to the spot that it actually makes sense. Regardless, this is an electric fight. I think Hernandez is strong. He's got good wrestling. He tore into the UFC. He got the the KO over Beneil Dariush, I think is like a top 5 lightweight right now. Though I'll never forget or forgive him faking the touch gloves and then knocking out Beneil Dariush. Not a fan of that. And he's beaten some good guys since then. It was Cerrone who actually humbled him, which is a big name. And you lose to a guy like Cerrone, but you beat a guy like Beneil Dariush. I don't know why you're in the early prelims. Regardless of how he got his wins, he has a pattern of starting strong and fighting, using his strength to overwhelm. So he starts fast. He uses his strength to overwhelm. Against guys like Cerrone, that doesn't work. He knows, like veterans of the sport know how to fight at a distance, how to slow the pace of a fight down. Hernandez is young and strong, but it doesn't matter if you have a guy who can use your kicks or use your jab to keep a distance from you. Moicano is a guy who has a really good jab, and Moicano is also a guy who's fought some dudes. He fought Korean Zombie. He fought Jose Aldo. He fought Cub Swanson, Calvin Cater, Brian Ortega, I think. I think he fought Jeremy Stevens as well, who's another guy who just fights fast and furious. So I don't think there's a scenario in which Hernandez frustrates him or overwhelms him. I think Moicano handles him well with patience, picks him apart with a jab, picks him apart with some ranged kicks. And I think there's a scenario where if Hernandez wants to take him down, he lets him and gets the submission win. I think Moicano, I think he takes this one by submission somewhere in the second round or maybe third round. I think Hernandez is going to try to fight fast and gas out.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. So I'm looking at Moicano. He is the favorite on the fight at -160. That's a 61% implied chance of victory. Hold on. Gotta get that out. That's interesting. Moicano is he is the favorite. Moicano -160, so a 61% chance. The books and bettors don't seem to quite know what to do with the over-under. Over-under is set at 2.5, but the juice is real small, -110. You actually have to pay more juice to bet the under at -120. So based on everything you said there, it sounds like Moicano is most likely. In this particular case, based on what you've said, I don't hate Moicano at -160 overall, but you can get him at DraftKings right now by submission at +240. And so again, your analysis suggests that's a very likely outcome. And +240 odds, not very likely, but +240 odds is only 29%. I think we give that more than a 30% chance of victory. So I'm going to take Moicano by submission as my main bet. And I'm going to put, we're going to take Moicano to win by submission, +240, and rely on Ian's analysis. And let's watch that fight. So it'll be fun to watch, see if Hernandez comes out fast, like you're saying, and if they go to the ground. And always don't forget, live bets are always possible. So if our analysis looks wrong mid-fight, that happens. Like we said at the top, like I'm talking about things that have 60% chances of occurring. So you're barely better than a coin flip. And so if you're watching these fights and they don't go how we expect, get in on the live bets, hedge yourself. You do it fast because the books update, but you can get in and hedge yourself. If the fight, just with any sport, if the game is not going as you expect, get into the live betting and hedge yourself. Do the math, use a hedge calculator online, but be smart and get in there. And you don't have to sit still. That's key with betting. We have our analysis, we have our predictions, but at the same time, you got to be ready to take action. Moicano by submission +240. We're going to leave out the over-under. We're going to leave out the rounds in this particular case. Next, I think we have Ian's favorite matchup to talk about, Cannonier and Derek Brunson. Ian, dive right in.
So I like this fight actually a lot. I'll say it pretty straight up. I think I like Brunson here as an underdog. I like his aggression. I like his wrestling. I like his top pressure. His last loss was to the current champion, Adesanya, which we'll talk about in a second. And he's not only been streaking, but he's been winning fights that he's like not really supposed to be winning. He's beating promotional hype trains, so to speak. Like he beat Derek Holland, he beat Edmund Shabazian. I always say his name wrong. I don't know why. He beat Darren Till. He beat Ian Heinisch. So these are fights that if you just look at the way they were promoted, he's not really supposed to win. So I like the way that he's complicating the division. Cannonier's a tough guy. He used to fight at light heavyweight. I think he's got a lot of power, and I think the line is leaning towards Cannonier's power versus Brunson's wrestling and pressure. But in those fights, as a former striker myself, I am going to bet on the guy who can wrestle you and put pressure on you. There's always a chance of a knockout from Cannonier. I just think Brunson looks like a more complete fighter, of late. And I think that he gets it done. I think he diminishes and thwarts Cannonier's power and closes the distance quick.
Really interesting. Yeah, as you mentioned, Brunson is the underdog. He's plus 140 at DraftKings. That implies a 41% chance of victory. Meanwhile, Cannonier is minus 160, which implies a 61% chance. If you do the math, you'll realize the sports books have a 102% chance of victory, and that's why we have to do shows like this so that we can figure out how to beat the sports books together, because they're going to win no matter what. So Derek Brunson plus 140 straight up as the underdog seems like a good bet. What you say about Cannonier's chance of KO makes a lot of sense, because they've got that set at plus 120, which is just below a coin flip, 45% chance. So it seems to me, if you like Cannonier to win, the KO is probably likely, and you're likely better off getting him at the plus 120 by KO versus he's plus 350 by decision. So if you think he's going to win, put your money on the KO at plus 120. Don't waste your time with the minus 160. However, we like Brunson just straight up plus 140. Let me ask you one more question about this. In that case, what's Brunson's ability to knock out? His KO odds are plus 700. So the books are telling you it's very unlikely Brunson KOs. You just mentioned more of a wrestler and top pressure. So we think if Brunson wins, probably by decision.
Probably. It's a 3-round fight. I think people get bored of Brunson just because he is a wrestler. He's going to take you down. He's going to put top pressure on, and he's probably just going to try to keep you down. He's not going to, try to do, I mean, he's obviously going to try to do damage, but that's not going to be his game plan, especially a guy as dangerous against a guy as dangerous as Cannonier. His game plan is going to be minimize the damage he's taking while retaining control. So it's going to be take him down, take away his power on the feet. So decision makes a lot of sense. If there's a KO to happen here for Brunson, it's going to be on the ground. It's going to be from ground and pound. And if he's not going to do it to a guy like Kevin Holland, he's not going to do it to a guy like Cannonier. So I think decision. I think he's going to ride the fight out. I think he's going to extend it. He's going to try to get through it with his pressure.
Not making this pick just yet, but I will consider Brunson to win by decision. I'm taking him 100%. We're going to make this the sweet bet of the night, unless Adesanya's got something really fun to say. But we're going to make Derek Brunson straight up plus 140 as the underdog, our sweet bet of the night. All right, next we got Derek Lewis, always a fan favorite. Don't miss his interviews, versus Tai Tuivasa. So what do you got to say on this fight, Ian?
So this goes one of two ways for me. The one way, you have Derek Lewis, who has the record for the most knockouts in UFC history. And that's not just like heavyweight in the heavyweight division. That's like every UFC fighter who's ever fought. Derek Lewis has more knockouts than them in the UFC. Versus Tuivasa, who has 4 knockouts in his last 4 fights. So he is fully capable of doing the same exact thing that Lewis is. So there's a good reason to probably expect a knockout here. If I had to pick a winner by way of knockout, it would be Lewis, just because I like his accuracy. He knows how to counter. He knows how to pick his moments. Tuivasa would be smart not to rush in, because guys that do that get knocked out by Derek Lewis. Having said that, though, the other way that this could play out is when you have power like that and you know not to rush in, you got to respect the power, and that extends fights. In some of these heavyweight fights, we've seen guys respect the power too much, hang back, look for the counters that might not be there, and it ends up going to a decision. So I could see a scenario too. You'd have to look at the lines and tell me what makes more sense mathematically. So I could see Lewis by knockout, or I could see Tuivasa kind of like hanging back, peppering Lewis with like some leg kicks, not getting in range too close and getting the hell out of the way, on his way to a decision by points. So based on the lines, Lewis by knockout or Tuivasa by decision, I think are those 2 ways that make the most sense for me that this goes.
That makes a lot of sense. And where I'm looking, so Derek Lewis is the favorite. He's minus 170, just simply implies about a 63% chance of victory for Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis by KO is minus 135. So again, if you're going to pick Lewis, you're going to assume he's going to win by KO, not decision. You might as well save yourself that juice and take Lewis by KO at minus 135. However, I'm intrigued by the over-under on just total rounds. They've got the line set at 1.5 with the over the underdog. So this is one of those bets where the public, everybody thinks two heavyweights coming in are going to come out swinging. However, when you know UFC a little better, as you just described, these fighters might hang back. They're going to be aware of that power. And so I think my favorite bet on this fight is actually over 1.5 rounds at plus 140. The other just so for this fight, I really like the total rounds over 1.5 plus 140. That's definitely my favorite bet of the fight. But just based on everything you said, to hedge, you can get Tuivasa to win by decision at plus 700. That's 7-1. And so again, if you like Lewis, just taking Lewis with KO at minus 135. I'm going to put money on the over 1.5 at plus 140. I might hedge again. Do the math when you're going to hedge. Always use a hedge calculator. Make sure things are working out for you. But Tuivasa by decision, it's 7-1. It feels like it might not be so unlikely. That implies a 12% chance. I've seen Derek Lewis personally at your house. We watched Derek Lewis stand around and dance around the ring for 3 rounds.
Yeah, it's like he's been around long enough that it's not lost on anybody. You don't get in close on Derek Lewis. You don't do it. I don't care what your striking is like. I don't care what your wrestling is like. Curtis Blades is an amazing wrestler, and everybody knew that. Derek Lewis knew that too going in, and he waited for his moment. He waited for Curtis Blades to shoot in for the takedown, and he hit him with an uppercut that sent him stiff and put him in an ambulance. Like, this dude knows how to wait for his moments. He's got power to just, land on the short shots. Tuivasa is a young guy, and he's eager to make his mark. And I think he's definitely done a little bit of that already. But like, you can't fight Derek Lewis in Derek Lewis's game. You got to stay on the outside. You got to stay away from his right hand.
And Tuivasa is not inexperienced, so I would expect him to be smart. How are his coaches? Is he trained well? What do you think? Do you think he'll know that?
Well, he'll know that. He'll know that for sure. So what this is going to come down to is how patient both men can be. Derek Lewis, it's not the end of the world for him if he gets impatient. His last fight versus Chris Daukaus, he just, like, at the end of round 1 was like, I can knock this guy out. And he just went in and did it. Like, you're just like, screw it. I'm going to go knock this dude out. And he just went in and broke his face. I don't think he can do that to Tuivasa. I mean, he might feel comfortable enough. He might see something in the fight where he's like, I'm just going to go after him and end this fight, because, to quote Derek Lewis, I ain't got the cardio for that.
I told you, don't miss his interviews.
Yeah.
They're always hot. Interviews are always hot.
Tuivasa, he knows how to get knockouts. And I think this is kind of like a feather in his cap sort of situation, where if he goes in and he knocks out Derek Lewis, he's the guy to beat. He's next up, if not soon, for the title shot. Yeah. So yeah. I think he's going in there knowing this is a big fight, knowing a knockout does wonders for his career and his trajectory. But I think he is smart enough to know that, like, you could win without getting the knockout and still be on the same path.
Makes a lot of sense. So again, check the books. I've been using DraftKings. I have not had a chance to check tonight at FanDuel, Caesars, MGM, the host of mobile betting that is now legal in New York State. So just check your books. But again, Derek Lewis is a favorite by minus 170. We like the over 1.5. As much as people think this is going to be a quick knockout, we both agree that these fighters are smart and they are aware of the other fighter's power. So there's a good chance in my mind that this could go beyond the first round. I think we can get to 2 rounds. The only thing that the caveat to that, just to be transparent, is, like you said, in Derek Lewis's own words, he don't have the cardio for that. So he might go for that knockout, but again, if he doesn't see the opportunity, he won't take it. He's smart. He's smarter. So I really like the over 1.5 at plus 140. And if you want to put some, I might put $1 on it, put a half unit on it, but Tuivasa to win by decision at plus 700, kind of the contrarian bet there. All right, and next we get to our main event of the night, Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker 2. This is the rematch. I think Adesanya is probably my favorite fighter in UFC right now. I don't know how he's not a fan favorite, to be honest. He is just incredible to watch. Tall, lanky, powerful. He has it all. So how do you think Whittaker is going to hold up here in his second bout against Adesanya?
Well, you can be certain that he's not going to underestimate him the same way that I think he did in the first fight. Whittaker or Adesanya came in and, he just beat dudes in ways that, we haven't seen since John Jones or Anderson Silva, probably. And just his frame, his accuracy, his patience, his precision, elusiveness, the dude just knows how to pick guys apart. And I don't think Whittaker, especially coming off an injury layoff, I don't think he was prepared for what he was getting into in the cage with Adesanya. So Whittaker, since then, has put together a string of very technical fights. And I think he's going to come into this with the same approach. I don't think he's going to underestimate Adesanya. I don't think he's going to charge him. I don't think he's going to, try to rush the fight. I think he knows it's 5 rounds. And I think he's going to try to use his head movement, stay behind his jab. I don't expect him to try to take Adesanya down much, even though we know it's effective from the Blachowicz fight. He's just a hard guy to take down. Bobby Knuckles said it in his interview recently. He's like, people are like, why don't you take Adesanya down? Because he's fucking hard to take down. Like he said it himself. He's a damn hard guy to take down. Like you try to take him down.
Adesanya, when you see him in the cage, it just to me looks like limbs everywhere, just limbs and trunk. The man is a tree, and he's swinging, and he knows how to swing those limbs. It's really incredible to watch.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is Whittaker is going to come into this knowing that he probably needs to secure some takedowns and wrestle him. Adesanya is probably like Whittaker said this himself. My guess is Adesanya has been training his takedown defense since he lost that Blachowicz fight. So I think Whittaker, ideally, will probably want to take him down and have the fight on the ground, but nobody's been able to do that to him. So I think what he's going to do is just lean on his jab, lean on his technical boxing skills, fight the fight at his range, which is really important because I think Adesanya has the reach advantage. And if Adesanya gets too far outside, he's a hard guy to hit. He's impossible to hit. Nobody's been able to do it. The only guy who did was Kelvin Gastelum, and he was able to get inside the range. I think if Whittaker can get inside the range, he'll have a lot of success. But that said, if we're looking at a technical fight between these two fighters, I'm going to lean towards Adesanya in just that stand-up game where if it's technical fighter versus technical fighter, I think Adesanya is on a level of his own. There's a reason Whittaker is number one contender, and there's a reason that Whittaker keeps beating guys in the division. But there's also a reason that Adesanya is champion. And
there's the reason Adesanya is a heavy favorite.
Yeah. I'm leaning Adesanya.
Yeah, he's minus 280 at DraftKings, which implies a 73% chance of victory. However, everything we've said, if it does turn into that technical fight like we're expecting, you can get over 4.5 rounds at minus 130, just a little bit of juice there. Under 4.5 rounds is even money, plus 100. What do you think the odds? It sounds like it's likely to go the distance. And that brings me to Adesanya by decision. You can get it plus 150. So again, our prediction is it's a technical fight. Adesanya holds up, probably goes the distance. Adesanya takes it by decision. So as I like to say, instead of paying the full 280, the minus 280 juice to get Adesanya straight up, why not take him by decision? The other thing that's interesting here is the Adesanya by KO TKO is not that far off of him as decision. That's must be where the under is coming from. People expecting him to win by a TKO at some point.
Because he did it once before. But the difference between this fight and the last fight, Whittaker came in, thought he could rush the guy, get inside his range, and secure the knockout. He learned pretty quickly Adesanya is too elusive and too accurate, and he's going to make you pay for that. At the same time, Adesanya's got some more fights under his belt than he did. I mean, he's got, I don't even know how many kickboxing fights under his belt. 100, maybe? I don't know. He's got a lot. I'll have to look that up later because I can't remember the exact number. But he's also learned in the UFC that to win these fights, you don't have to knock the guy out. When there's a guy in front of you that's that technical and that's scary, look at Paulo Costa, who he did knock out because Costa rushed him. Look at Yoel Romero. People talk trash about Adesanya by the way he fought Yoel Romero, but that guy is a juggernaut. Like, who in their right damn mind stands in front of that man and trades hands? Nobody. Adesanya knows that. And he says, you know what? I can beat this guy by hitting him and getting out of the way. Stick and move. Like, that's how you win fights against guys that are just that powerful, is you use your speed and you lose your elusiveness and you use your quickness. Adesanya is a smart fighter. He's not just accurate. He's accurate because he's smart. He knows when to fight, or he knows when to throw his punches. He knows where to throw his punches. He knows when to get out of the way. He knows when to attack. He knows how to fight.
Yeah, he's smart. It sounds like he changes his strategy for the fighter in front of him, and he's probably bigger than most of the fighters in UFC as well. He's at least taller.
One thing I can guarantee about this fight is it will not be a brawl.
Slow, technical, patient, good strikes when the time is right.
This will be a fascinating chess match. If it goes the way that it plays out, it's playing out in my head, this is going to be a fascinating chess match. This is going to be Whittaker versus Till on a whole nother level. This is going to be two guys who are the best in the UFC at technical striking playing a chess match and trying to hurt each other at the same time. It's going to be fun to watch. It's a good main event.
Yeah. So what I like here, over 4.5 rounds, just bet to go the distance, -130. That's easy. And then from there, what I like is Adesanya by decision at +150. And I actually like hedging those two. Again, use your hedge calculators, but make sure you're putting the bets when you're putting bets on multiple sides of the same event. Definitely use a hedge calculator to make sure you're not hurting yourself even more. But what you want to do is consider over 4.5, -130, Adesanya by decision +150. Those are the likely bets to happen, but you can hedge because you can get Whittaker by decision at +450. And again, if the fight doesn't go the way that we expect, get in on the live odds. This fight seems like it's probably going to go the way we expect because these fighters are smart. They know each other, obviously, from their last fight, and they're both just technical. So I'm confident in our analysis. But again, live betting is a great way to hedge yourself once you see a fight's not going exactly how you expected, how we expected. It always happens. It's fighting. It's UFC. And so, yeah, hedge live, but right off the top, I'm going to take over 4.5 total rounds at -130. DraftKings, again, check your books. Always make sure you're getting the best odds. And Adesanya to win by decision +150. I'm going to hedge it all with Whittaker by decision at +450, just in case the unexpected happens. And of course, watching live, if I have to, we'll jump in on the live odds. So follow SugarBets across social media because we'll be posting during the fights as well. With any live odd opportunities, we'll be sure to share those out during the fights. So